And we are back. Welcome to part 2 of how to beat the current meta in EASFC. Now, last time we spoke about how the 4-3-3-2 can be utilized to counter the current meta that obviously uses the likes of 4-3-2-1, 4-4-2, and 4-2-2-2. And if you missed last video, feel free to click the link in the description of this video or in the top right-hand corner of your screen right now. However, as I've just said, every formation has a formation that can counter it. So even though we're running 4-3-3-2 to stop us from coming up against or stop us from struggling against the likes of 4-3-2-1, 4-4-2 and 4-2-2, what's to stop someone else from playing a formation that then counters us? And how are we going to be able to deal with that when someone does do that? And believe me, there are so many different formations that can counter 4-3-3-2. And basically, it's just any formation that has a cam. So we're talking 4-2-3-1, be that the central variation or the wide variation, 4-3-3-4, 4-1-2-1-2, 4-3-1-2. All of those formations hard counter the 4-3-3-2. So we have to be prepared to deal with that when that situation comes up. And so what we do and what I do and what I'm going to advise you to do in this video is when you're coming up against a team that is using a 4-2-3-1, because that seems to be the most common of the formations, or like I say, a 4-1-2-1-2 or a 4-3-1-2, what I'm going to advise you to do is play this formation right here, which is the 3-5-2. And what we're going to do is we're basically going to play around those formations, because everyone that's running 4-2-3-1, 4-1-2-1-2, etc., they're all running it very, very narrow, which means we need to make use now of the wide areas. Where before we were playing nicely through the middle with our CDM, with our CMs, creating space and opportunities through there, we now need to create that space in the wide areas and go round those formations that don't want us to play through the middle. So what I'm going to start with, as always, is go through the tactics and then why I have certain players in certain positions, and of course, the all-important player instructions. So in terms of the tactics, once again, we're on high width, we're on high depth. The reason I've gone for a higher width is because we do have 3 at the back now rather than 4. I like the back 4 to be compact, but for a back 3, you need them to be a little bit wider to stop them getting in behind if the right mid and the left mid end up being a little bit too far forward. Our depth is still set to 72. I know everyone's still running 71, but the crucial difference is it's now pressure on heavy touch, not press after possession loss. Now, this is really important because what you don't want is to have that massive overcommit of players and then just one long ball in behind. Like I say, they do sometimes have those cams in those slightly wider areas. And if they do manage to hit a quick ball in behind when you go for a press after possession loss, you can end up in a 4v3 situation, which you absolutely don't want. So for this purpose, we have it on pressure on heavy touch, so we can then capitalize on a potential mistake in their defense while still maintaining that high width and that high depth. In terms of the actual build-up play, it's exactly the same. Balance, possession, 60 width. Players in the box is actually now set to 7, and I'll explain that in a short moment as well. And obviously corners and free kicks, as I said last time, is all about your personal preference. But here's the important thing. You'll notice that I've moved Alex Scott into midfield, I've moved Beckham to right wing, I've moved Keane to centre-back, and Riester to left mid. Now, it is so important when you're building these teams to have flexibility around who can play in certain positions. Be that the starting lineup in the first place, just to get everyone in the team, or actually where you set them when it comes to it. Because as I said, when you look at the 4-3-3, you'll see that Beckham's in midfield, Keane's at CDM, Scott's at right back. It's a much more usual setup as to what we'd be used to when we're playing stuff like this. However, in the 3-5-2, I've gone for it like this. Firstly, the important ones. So I have gone for Keane at centre-back because I like to have at least a 5'10" to obviously over 6 foot ideally. The CDM needs to move into centre-back. Now, you can have it whereby you have a fullback that plays at centre-back, but for me, it just makes it so much easier if you have a midfielder that can move into centre-back to allow you to make the transition much easier. Now, obviously, like I say, I could easily play Riester at centre-back. He is 6'2", could very easily do the job, but I like to have a left footer on the left-hand side and a right footer on the right-hand side. And the reason why I've gone for Beckham in the right mid area and not Scott is A, because Beckham's more physical. He's going to have to be doing a lot more of the defensive work. I need the big physical player in that wide area. But also, he has got relentless. And obviously, he's then got all the crossing stats as well, which is going to be very important as we come to the actual instructions. So once again, as always, keep a set on come for crosses, sweeper, keeper. It's just how I operate things, especially when we're playing that high depth. The back three, once again, nothing to touch on them. Stay back while attacking, normal interceptions, stick to position. Again, like I said last time, if you want to push it up to aggressive interceptions to stop that direct passing, you can. All depends on the stamina of your defenders. For me, it's not worth it, especially in the back three where you don't want to get caught out. Now we move on to the two wide players. These are the two most important players in this team. As you'll see when we get to the gameplay, almost everything ends up going out wide to these two wide players. So I've got them on come back on defense, stay wide, come short, get into box, and conservative interceptions. There are a lot of contradictions in there, but it all makes sense in a moment. So the comeback on the defense is just an absolute no-brainer. You have to have these players coming back because when you're defending, it then transitions into a back five defensively, which is really helpful for you. The reason I have them on stay wide is because I don't want them drifting infield. I don't want them getting involved in the middle because, as we've said, the whole purpose of this is to have them out wide to stretch all those formations that are putting pressure on us in the narrow areas. I have them on come short because they do have this tendency to just sort of like bomb all the way on. So by going on come short, it gives them that opportunity to, at the start of play, just be available for them. And it doesn't matter. Like, obviously, you might be thinking, well, obviously, they're going to be bombing forward. You've got them on get into the box. I have done it on stay edge in the box. I've tried all sorts. And you just need to have it on come short. Otherwise, they just end up basically playing at right wing rather than right mid. The reason why I have them on get into the box is because, as we've already mentioned in the tactics, we've set our players in the box to 7. As you can see by the graphic here, there's our two strikers and our cam, but also we've then got our opposite winger coming in at the back post. And when you have people like Risa and Beckham, and like I say, maybe use someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold with that long pass plus thing, where the whipped pass, where the crosses are just uninterceptable. But just in case you're using players that don't have relentless on their card, I have my interceptions set to conservative. Now, I only do this on the wide players, and that is because of how much work they have to get through. They're going to be bombing up and down that right and left-hand side of the pitch all game long. And trust me when I say this, putting someone on conservative interceptions rescues about 10 to 20 stamina over the course of a game. In the midfield, I do this a particular way, and it all comes down to basically strong foot, weak foot. I have one player that stays back. So both of them I have set to cut passing lanes, cover centre, stick to position, normal interceptions. However, you will notice that Alex Scott is set to stay back while attacking, and Tim Cahill is set to balanced. This is just how I operate things. I like to have one of my two midfielders just getting a little bit more involved and one of them staying back. Again, this then comes down to strong foot, weak foot. At the moment, I don't have a left-footed CDM, so I have the right-footed CDM as the one that stays back, and then my more progressive player going forward. At cam, I have them set to stay forward, stay on edge, free roam, and then the front two, absolutely basic, and just have them on stay forward. It is as simple as that. That's how we operate. Once again, we're possession-based, but we're utilising the wide areas rather than the players in the middle. However, there is one other thing that we have to touch on before we go into gameplay, and that is that over the last couple of weeks, there has been a massive surge in players that have been playing 4-3-3-4. And the reason why 4-3-3-4 is a problem is if I bring up the graphics once again, you will see that the difference between those three cams being changed to a cam and two wingers is what happens is it actually ends up pinning back our two right and left-sided centre-backs, which means that they are much deeper in behind the right mid and left mid. And I actually think that 4-3-3-4 does still cause problems to 3-5-2. So what I have done is I've also set up a 5-2-1-2 formation.
You disgust me.
Just to deal with 4-3-3-4s, because I think over the next month or so, you're going to see a bit of a surge in 4-3-3-4. I really do. And unfortunately right now, if you're someone that thinks that 5 backs are just too ratty and you don't think people should be playing 5 at the back, that's up to you. Feel free to skip forward to the 3-5-2 gameplay, but I'm just putting this out there as a warning that if you are going to play 3-5-2, please do be aware of 4-3-3-4. And again, my instructions are very similar. Pressure on heavy touch, but this time the width and the depth are much lower because the 4-3-3-4 is pinning us back. In terms of instructions, it's all very, very similar. However, this time with the right wing back and left wing back, they're set to stay back and overlap for all the reasons we mentioned before. And then, of course, the midfield is now set to exactly the same. Stay back while attacking on the CDM style player, balanced attack, and then, of course, balance, balance, balance for the front three. Let's see what it plays like in game.
And here we go.
Here's our first clip from the first game. You can see our opponent trying to get down the middle, but we are pretty solid in our defensive line. And as you can see, because of how narrow we managed to get ourselves, it becomes a back five We can pin them in. There are no runs down to the byline today, and Alex Scott wins the ball back. And then we're easily able to start transitioning through the team. Once again, playing it out wide to Risa, creating the space in those wide areas because they're not used to playing against people in those wide areas. I then tried to do one of those crosses to the back post, but for whatever reason, Risa then ran over the ball. We then recycle the ball, get it into decent spaces, again go wide, using that opportunity, back inside to Mostovoy. Great turn from him. Simple cut back to Ian Rush to get the opening goal of the game. Now, as you can see straight from kickoff, our defence actually does end up lining up as a back five. This is because we have them set to come back on defence, and that then allows us to be a lot more compact when our opponents start to come forward. You see we win the ball back here with Scott, and I then make a mistake. As I said in my last video, you have to play backwards when you initially win the ball, and unfortunately, that mistake is then punished by absolute nonsense where Collier actually won the ball, and then Dudek saved the shot, but unfortunately, it still went in. But again, we don't panic. From our own kickoff, again, now you can see the 3-5-2 with Risa and Beckham basically playing at right wing and left wing, way further forward. That then allows us that little bit of early space to straight away run basically down the pitch with Marquez because they're just covering passes in the wide areas. We don't quite get it through, but we keep our shape. We're pretty steady, and that stops them from getting forward again. And when Beckham wins it, again, I should have played that one backwards. This time I've learned from my mistake, and we do recycle it back to Dudek. And immediately, again, you can see Risa in the wide area and Beckham in the wide area, creating that space, which then allows us to start playing through the middle as they cover the wide areas, splitting them open. Ian Rush gets through again, and he makes absolutely no mistake with that finish. And this is, again, what we're about. By creating that space in the wide areas, one of two things will happen. Either they will stay really narrow and allow us to get round the outside of them, or they will then start to cover those wide areas, which will then create the space that we originally want in the middle to score goals like that. Now, this goal that we score is my favourite goal of the year so far because it just encapsulates everything about this formation. As you can see, our opponent goes for a broken finesse shot. We hold it with Dudek, but we wait. As we said, we let our players get back into shape. We wait for Risa and Beckham to get into those wide areas, and then watch this. That kick right there is always on. If they're playing these narrow formations with those cams to stop us playing 4-3-3-2, that kick is always on. If I pause it here once again, you can see I can either kick it left to Risa, like I actually do, or I can kick it right to Beckham. They are both in acres of space. And then here's what happens. Risa takes the ball on the full. He's overcommitted his defender. He's right back to that position. We can charge forward with Risa. They're not going to stop him. We now get to the byline, play a simple ball across, and Ian Rush has a hat-trick. And again, like you say, you want to talk about my icons and heroes, Ian Rush is literally 5k above discard price. So if you want to moan at me for having that as a card, feel free to do so in the comments. But for me, Ian Rush is not a very good card. But because of the style of play that we enforce, he has got himself a hat-trick inside the first half.
Stupendous.
Final clip from the first game just to sort of wrap everything up. You can see again, when we get the ball, we're spreading the play, stretching the team. Because we're on the left-hand side, Beckham's now in acres of space on the right-hand side. It's an easy switch. We play inside. We use the possession style of play again, keeping it tight, looking for opportunities to create space. There isn't one, we find another one. We get it to Beckham. You see Risa making that run to the back post because he's set to get into box. Beckham plays it in. Risa's unlucky not to get there. Rice takes a heavy touch, so press after heavy touch comes in. Alex Scott wins the ball back, but sadly once again gives it away. But they're now starting to panic. They give it to Ian Rush, and then check this one out. Little see you later on Rudiger, round the goalkeeper, and we tap it in. And it's 4-1, and Ian Rush has got all four. And like I say, that just sort of encapsulates everything about the 3-5-2 in that first game. Into game number 2 then, and once again you'll see our opponent is starting in a 4-2-4, but then moves Griezmann into Cam into a 4-2-3-1. I assume that would be the case straight away, so of course we immediately transition ourselves into our 3-5-2 setup, and you will notice there's a couple of personnel changes. We've now got Al Jaber up front instead of Ian Rush, and straight away we give the ball away and almost concede, but thankfully we get ourselves sorted, pass the ball back to Dudek, and now we wait while our team gets set in our actual formation. And eventually you'll see that Scott moves into midfield, and Risa has now made that transition out to left mid. There we go, Scott in midfield, Risa's out at left mid, Beckham's now out at right mid. And sometimes you can just do this. That is purely down to how we're set to play. I have told Beckham to make that run in behind. And if you allow those sort of opportunities to be created, you can change it. Yes, we're set to play on possession. Yes, we're normally doing short passes. But if you've got the players with the right sort of capabilities of getting in behind in those wide areas, that's why I put so much emphasis on those wide players being so important. You can just forget about the tiki-taka and just every once in a while just hit that ball, because they are so good in those areas. And because we have already stretched the team where we've moved it round in those first couple of minutes, the left back is isolated against David Beckham in that area. And because they're a small fullback, and like I say, I struggle with small fullbacks, I would never voluntarily play a small fullback. It allows Beckham to out-physical them, and then it's a fantastic finish. Once again, our normal process at goal kicks: play it short, play it wide, get straight into our opposition straight away, and look at the space that Beckham's in on that far side already. That's then caused the fullback to be stretched out. Now we've got a 5v4 situation. I've got it out to Risa. I'm then going to put the ball in short to Cahill, into Littmanen, and annoyingly, I've overplayed it. I've got a little bit overconfident, but then Scott wins it back into Beckham, into Littmanen again. He's through on goal, and he just puts it straight onto the post. Literally the next phase of play for you now. As you can see, Collier wins the ball back with a great interception. We then straight away start playing our football again. Play it back to Marquez to absorb a little bit of pressure, wait for the opportunities. Beckham and Risa have stretched to the fence once again, allowing us to now create space down the middle as Littmanen makes the run in behind once again. He's clean through, and once again, he's fumbled the opportunity. And now the final clip from this game as well. As you can see, they're trying to push forward once again. We win the ball back with Marquez, and this time we can spring the trap immediately. They're pressing us. Yes, we've got Ronaldinho. It's the Trailblazer Cup. I'm allowed one loan. Littmanen's in behind one last time, and this time he gets it round Donnarumma and puts it away. Once again proving that you don't just have to use possession to get these goals. You can go round your opponents and win it that way as well. The one final thing to note before we round off today's video, this is a game where I've transitioned into the 5-2-1-2, and here you'll be able to see the subtle difference between the 3-5-2 and the 5-2-1-2. You'll see because we have our fullback set to stay back while attacking, you can see that Beckham is not running into that space there. In the 3-5-2, he would be running into that space. However, because it's a 5-2-1-2 and they're set to stay back overlap, unless we manually tell them with the D-pad to get forward, they are going to stay there. But like I said, this is more about stopping a 4-3-3-4 where we don't want to overcommit our right wing back, left wing back, because they're going to get overrun on that side if they do end up going too far forward. So that would be my advice. If you are going to try 5-2-1-2, just be aware that unless you set them to get forward, they are just going to be a little bit more pinned back, which does allow chance creation to be a little bit harder. So just bear that in mind if you are going to go for a 5-2-1-2. Let's head in to the final thoughts and wrap up today's video. So the final thing I'd like to address is, of course, the comments from last video that spoke about my team and that the fact that you can just do what you want because it is a full icon and full hero team. Now, because of that, I thought what I would do is build a team for you here consisting of players that you guys could already have or upgrade through the Evos or by completing objectives, doing SBCs, etc. that all then abide by the same sort of rules of how I have my team set up there. So you can see we're set up as a 4-4-1-1 as our default formation. And you'll notice that I've got Matteo Darmian's road to the knockout at right mid on an architect. Now, the reason I've done that is because what I'm going to do is I'm going to have him as the CDM in the 4-3-3 second variation. You might be wondering, why would I put Darmian as the CDM in a 4-3-3? Well, if you actually look at his stats on that architect, he's 3-star skill, 4-star weak foot. He's 6 foot tall. And look at those stats. He goes to 79 vision, 99 short passing, 84 long passing on a 5-star weak foot. He's already got good pace. He's already got fantastic defending. And with the physical boost, he goes to 91 jumping, 80 strength, and 82 aggression. He's absolutely ideal to play as that CDM in the 4-3-3. And then once we transition to a 3-5-2, you will see that we've then got Darmian in the middle of the back three with Tomori on the right-hand side, the Evo'd Ben Sabini, who I cannot recommend enough as the left-sided centre-back. And then also, of course, there is that 77 rated Kone. But the reason I've suggested him is because you can pick him up at level 40 in the season progression. And he is absolutely ideal to be that box-to-box style player. And then once again, you've got the likes of Teo Hernandez and Bush in the wide areas. Massive stamina on these guys, up and down. And Teo Hernandez also has Relentless as well, which just makes things absolutely fantastic. So really all that's left to say now is that now that we've got a counter for the 4-3-2-1 and the 4-4-2 with the 4-3-3 second variation. And now that we know that that gets countered by the 4-2-3-1s and the 4-1-2-1-2s, and now we know that that can get countered by the 3-5-2s and the 5-2-1-2s, your final question will be, well, hang on a minute. How do we now stop people from just running 3-5-2s and 5-2-1-2s? Aren't we going to end up in a situation like last year whereby we're just going to be dominated by 3 backs and the 3-4-3s and the 3-4-2-1s and the 3-5-2s and the 5-4-1s? What are we going to do to counter other people from doing that to us? Well, ladies and gentlemen, there's a reason the current meta is 4-3-2-1, 4-4-2 and 4-2-2. It's because at the back end of FIFA 23, everyone was running 3 backs, and the way to counter that is to play 4-3-2-1, 4-4-2 and 4-2-2, and thus the massive cycle of rock, paper, scissors within EAFC is complete. And essentially what you need to do is use your 4 custom tactics to have those 4 setups. Have a 3-5-2, have a 4-3-2-1, have a 4-2-3-1, and have a 4-3-3 second variation. Thank you very much for watching this video. If you have enjoyed it, please do consider dropping a like on the video and subscribing to the channel if you're new around here. Let me know what else you'd like to see me do. I've obviously done my controller setup, my camera setup, and now all of my custom tactics. Make sure to check out my Legends Only RTG streams that go live either on Saturdays, on Sundays, as we play FUT Champs. And obviously I do some player reviews on new icons and heroes as they come out as well. Thank you very much for watching once again. I'll see you very soon.